Hey guys, Dov here, back with another underrated unit, and as promised, we're here with the Northern Barbarians, and we've got, no, not Berserkers, of course, Marauder Hunters with throwing axes. I've been talking about it for a bit now, so here we are. We're up against Lizardmen, which is definitely, I think, probably the best matchup to pull this off. I'm up against Poison Ducky Prez, who is a great guy, great member of the community, has his own YouTube channel, and if I forget somehow of Poison Ducky, feel free to link your own channel in the comments down below, but it should be in the description if I cannot be a potato. Anyway, so what do we got here? We got Wulfric on a horse. This is a specific synergy with Sword of Torgald. Since he has primarily non-armor piercing damage here, we're going to get that 90% base weapon damage. He's got an armor debuff from Hunter of Champions. Also got Bray Shaman, Lore of Metal here. Or not Bray Shaman, Shaman Sorcerer. Wrong Chariot Lord. Searing Doom and Plague of Rust. Searing Doom specifically to take out cavalry in case of cold ones. That was kind of the thing I was most worried about with this build. We've got 3 champions with 4 Marauders as a screen, and the Miststalkers as a terror option. For the Lizardmen, oh, the Horsemen as well, of course. For the Lizardmen, a little bit of an experimental build from Poison Ducky here, but I like quite a few elements of it. We've got a bunch of Razordon hunting packs, potentially very good in this matchup. Mazdamundi, Cohort of Sotek, got some Sacred Croc scores, and some Saurus up front, some more Sacred Croc scores over here. So basically, I'm going to try and mirror the monster's movements as much as I can with the Marauder Hunters, and they have pretty good melee attack too, so even if they get compromised, as long as there's like a Plague of Rust or something to help debuff the armor of these big boys, they actually can even get some damage in that way. We're going to go ahead and start the action with the Plague of Rust there on Mazdamundi. The champions also come forward to fight the Saurus. I'm going to just path the Marauders up and around to get like flank engagements and just support, and the champions are going to actually act as the main line here. Shielded champions are an excellent unit, probably going to do a video about them eventually as well, but a nice banishment coming down in the back here, forcing my Marauder Hunters off station and not allowing them to support in this front line. You can see here that the Razordon hunting packs, they do outrange, 100 range to 90 or 80 for the Hunters. It's not that much of a difference though. Oh man, that banishment is definitely doing some damage. Also, Searing Doom being used. I'm a big fan of Searing Doom against cavalry type units. You can see it does some really nice damage there, that hunting pack. But in this engagement, both of us are just blasting in with armor-piercing missiles. You can see all the throwing axes coming in against those Sacred Croc scores, and all of the Razordon barbs, I guess, coming in against the Famir. So basically just everything here is dying to armor-piercing missiles. And then in the center, we got a pretty good engagement. Hunter of Champions on Mazdamundi. You can see he's breaking back here with the Croc scores and with other units, trying his best to disrupt these Marauder Hunters, which is definitely what he needs to do. Harmonic Convergence, or Apotheosis rather, on Mazdamundi. We had been debuffing him with the Hunter of Champions and so on. Looks like we're going to have another Plague of Rust there to help Wulfric kind of trade decently effectively, and I'm trying to pull back with my Marauder Hunters. One benefit, too, of the Throwing Axe Hunters over the Javelin Hunters is, like, you see this right here? These Cohort of Sotek are caught up, they're doing some damage, they're kind of disrupting the side of this formation here, although the Throwing Axes are mostly still able to fire thanks to guard mode, but, I mean, these guys only have 25 melee defense, so at 36 melee attack, these Hunters can actually fight back reasonably decently. I mean, it's not something you would want, certainly, but big ol' Overcast Net here. It's going to just stop up all of these not Berserkers, Hunters trying to get away, but they're still close enough to Mazdamundi, and he doesn't have enough unit presence here to, like, bog all of them down at the same time. So, like, the Croxies come forward, they're going to bog down a few unit models, but all the time, Mazdamundi's continuously taking throwing axe damage to the face, and I know some of you have been saying that the throwing axes, because of their low range, are unusable. It's actually only 10 less range than the Javelins, so it's basically the same. And the fact that they do so much damage up close, and the fact you can put them in guard mode, and many times they'll continue firing, even if they're engaged, like, it ends up being that, I mean, they are close quarters infantry, right? It's what they says in the tooltip. Decent melee combatant with armor-piercing missiles, and all of that is true. So, with the support and everything, like, even if they're just fighting in melee, sure, it's not ideal, but with armor debuffs and with other things, they can get some work done. You can see Plague of Rust plus Hunter of Champions means only 40 armor from Mazdamundi, so, like, the Marauders hitting him if these Hunters were in melee, but of course they're out at range throwing their axes. Another beautiful banishment, but you see, even the Croc scores that push back here, they're very tattered. They're able to be seen off. Extra melee attack definitely does make a difference. Here in the back, these, what are they called? hunting packs, the Razordons have been trying to get back to blast what few high-value armor targets I still have left. I mean, they absolutely shredded the Miststalkers already, but thankfully the Hunters are able to basically carry in the late game there. Of course, the Champion's also a huge part of that. It's forming a really solid backbone. You guys trade super well against Saurus, and as a result, I'm a big fan in this matchup. They can tank pretty well against monsters because of their decent melee defense. Provide a nice front line for these Marauders, the Hunters, to get the work done. You can see low kill count on all of them. None of them actually got XP chevrons, but tons of damage being done to the Croc scores. Mazdamundi himself, also, Poison Ducky ended up having to commit a lot of resources into the backline, try and take them out because his build was relatively narrow. Yeah, and kind of while we were talking in chat after the game, we were kind of in voice chat just saying, what could potentially be changed about Poison Ducky's build, because he did say it was a little bit experimental. From my perspective, and I'm curious to see what you guys have to say, but I would say that the Sacred Croc scores, I like the pick of the Saurus. They're decent here. They'll trade pretty okay against most infantry, especially with the right buffs. I'd probably cut the Sacred Croc scores and go with, like I said, the Cold One Riders, for me, it was the thing I was most worried about in terms of my build, like what I could potentially be vulnerable to. But this sort of missile play is pretty strong as well. I like the Razordons. I'd probably only take 2, and then maybe take a Chameleon Skink on the side. But anyway, let's go ahead and get back to the Throwing Axe Hunters. I just want to make some quick comparisons here so you guys know where I'm coming from as to how awesome this unit actually is. So, yeah, they've got 68 unit models, right? A typical skirmisher, but just in comparison here, it's minus 10 range, right? Which is really not a lot at the end of the day, especially when you're already up that close. Pure armor piercing damage, like, yes, you do slightly less damage overall. Not pure, I guess, mostly pure armor piercing damage. Slightly less damage overall against large targets, but, again, the non-AP nature of the Javelins, I mean, they still have pretty decent AP values. 7 AP is definitely not bad. But, I mean, it just does overall more armor-piercing damage, I believe. And more than that, look at the stat difference here. Plus 10 melee defense for literally the same cost on Marauder Hunters with throwing axes. I mean, melee defense might see, or minus 2 melee defense, it's bad, but it's not a big deal. Definitely plus 10 melee defense is well worth that trade-off, in my mind. Yeah. They do have less of a charge bonus as well, and Marauder Hunters with 12 charge bonus, not that you would be charging them in necessarily, but that may end up being a factor in a very late game situation. Definitely, though, the melee attack difference is huge. The fact that these guys are only 550, like, they can be really cheap AP damage, right? Like, if you take a look here, Free Company are 100 points less. They're both classed as close quarters infantry, so they're kind of a decent comparison in my mind. Free Company, again, plus 10 range. They're the same as the Javelins, but way more unit models, right? 90 unit models. They also have Vanguard, don't have Enrage. I mean, there's some differences also in terms of stats, but again, look at that. 28 versus 36. Marauder Hunters with the great melee attack, just in general, for a skirmish unit. And, yeah, I mean, you can see there that the Free Company, which is a unit I'm already a pretty big fan of, they do pretty good damage, 2 AP per shot, but just compare that to the, like, pure armor-piercing value of Hunters, which is going to be almost universally useful, right? And for only 100 points difference, units are quite comparable. Another one that we could potentially compare them to is, of course, the other ranged throwing axe infantry, for the Dwarfs. Rangers with great weapons, 100 points more expensive, and Rangers with great weapons have worse stats overall. They do have a little bit better armor, and a little bit less health, actually, interestingly enough. They do slightly more missile damage overall, looks like, and they have also armor-piercing melee attacks, but, of course, they don't have the same melee attack profile. Less leadership, of course, because for the Hunters, because they're dwarfs. They're not dwarfs, I should say, but they are much faster than... Well, not much faster. A little bit faster than the Rangers with great weapons, so it's kind of an interesting comparison. 100 points less expensive, too, means it's easier for the Hunters to pay for themselves. They don't have the Stalk or the Vanguard, which is a thing. It's a difference. But again, for me, just purely in terms of ranged value, it's hard to beat the Marauder Hunters with throwing axes in this price range. As far as, like, armor-piercing damage goes, I mean, really, you end up, for most armor-piercing missile infantry, Like for Dark Shards, you know, handgunners and so on, you end up paying like 600 plus in many cases, even for the dwarves as well. So a sub 600 armor-piercing ranged unit that also has really nice combat stats, actually. I mean, what's not to like here? I don't get it. I've been using them a lot against Lizardmen, of course, is the best matchup I've found, but Tomb Kings also can be quite good in that matchup. There are a few others as well, but I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Have you used the Throwing Axe Hunters? What has been your experience with them? So let me know down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoy. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.